Alright guys, MTech Guy here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the E60 M5 and talking about your engine oil level being overfilled, the level being too high, and what to do to rectify that if you do find yourself in this situation. Okay, so you might be saying to yourself, alright MTech Guy, what kind of idiot overfills their engine with oil? Well, me for starters, it literally happened to me just recently following an oil change, so let's take a look how easily it can happen to yourself. So obviously these engines don't have a traditional dipstick. The level reading's taken using a sensor in the sump and then a display on your dash. Now to gain the correct reading, there's two ways of doing it. You can either get a short-term reading, which is kind of like a quick but sort of rough estimate, or you can get a long-term reading. Now the short-term reading you get by pressing the BC button for 3 seconds on your indicator stalk. Wait for a minute, it'll think about it, you'll get a little clock symbol up on the dash, and then it'll give you that reading. But like I say, it's a kind of rough estimate reading. If you want a really accurate reading, you have to take the car for a drive or 30 minutes or so, let it do its thing, it'll think about it, it'll look at all the parameters, and then it'll give you that correct reading. And it's looking at parameters like your engine oil temperature. It needs to be over 70 degrees C before it'll give you a correct reading, and also the car needs to be on a level surface to be able to gain that reading. Now when you call up the request for an oil reading from the dashboard itself, from the car itself, what can happen sometimes is it can give you this symbol, which I'll give you in the bottom of the left hand screen here. Now that means that it hasn't got enough information to give you any kind of reading, so it just needs to think about it a bit more, look at all them parameters for a bit longer to give you a sort of reasonable reading. Now what can happen sometimes, which I've found a couple of times myself, is the computer can get stuck in a kind of loop, so you'll just see this image on the dash for quite some time and it won't give you a reading, so then you're in a situation where you can't actually get an oil level reading. So you can find yourself in a situation where you've warmed the engine oil up correctly, you've done an oil change, you've drained it, you've refilled it, you've warmed the engine oil up again, you've gone to get that quick reading, and then you've got this symbol down the bottom left hand corner of the screen again, the sort of dash dot dash. That means that it's thinking about it, and then if it does get stuck in a loop, you're not going to be able to get a correct reading again. So to rectify this, you can try to get the quick reading again. Normally that doesn't work. It normally requires you to take the car out for a drive, so you'd obviously want to keep the revs low. You don't want to be revving the engine out too much, and then after 30 or 40 minutes of driving, once you're on a level surface, it should give you that correct reading. You'll see the clock symbol come up eventually. Wait for 60 seconds and then it'll give you that correct reading eventually. Now obviously overfilling your engine with oil is something that you certainly want to avoid, because what can happen if you just take off, you go drive the car as normal, or drive an M5 like you normally drive it, what can happen is the bottom of the crank can whip the engine oil up, it can dip into the oil level and whip it up, it'll get all foamy, and then your pump won't distribute that oil correctly throughout your engine, and then it's going to cause engine damage. So it's really important that if you do find yourself in this situation where your oil level's even marginally higher than it should be, you want to look at rectifying it as soon as you can. Okay, so like I say, this happened to me recently. So I'd performed an oil change, I'd drained just over 9 litres out of the engine, I'd put approximately 8 litres back in the engine, I'd gone back in the car just to get that quick reading, and of course it just got stuck with that dash dot and a dash, got stuck in a loop, wouldn't give me a reading. Now of course I didn't want to run the engine with not enough oil in it, so I went and put another litre in, measured another litre in, came back, wouldn't give me that reading again, so I let the engine run way past the 70 degrees C that's required, and eventually it did give me a reading, but it was showing 1.5 litres on the dashboard, so that means that it's half a litre overfilled. So now I'm reluctant to drive the car because obviously it's showing that it's got just a little bit too much oil in it, so we're going to look at rectifying that today. But first of all, let's go and take a look at the reading on the dash. Okay, so as you can see, we're inside the car here now. We're taking a look at the oil level reading on the dashboard there. Now you can see it says oil 1.5 litres. Now that bar on the right hand side with the 2 arrows, them 2 arrows represent the last litre of oil in your oil level, and it should just say oil 1 litre when it's at the perfect level. Now you can see mine says 1.5, so that's telling me that I'm 0.5 of a litre overfilled from the actual level required. Now it's not uncommon following an oil change to see a higher than normal reading. Even if you've put the correct amount of oil in there, you might see it says like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Normally, if you take the car for a short, just steady drive, it'll normally come right. You'll normally see it'll end up about 1 litre, 1.1, which is fine. Now, you can probably get away with up to about 1.2, 1.3. Anything above that, you really need to think about correcting the level. Now, although it says 1.5 litres there, that 0.5 over, that's where it maxes out. So you could put an extra litre, even 2 litres in, but on the dashboard it would only say 1.5 litres because it maxes out at that half a litre over. So we really need to look at rectifying that oil level. We're aiming for 1 litre on the dash there. Now let's go and have a look at how we're going to correct it. Okay, so what's going to be the best way of sorting this out? Now obviously we don't want to start pulling the sump plug out of the bottom of the engine because you're going to have a heap of oil pouring out of there. It's going to get messy. Now, one great thing about these engines is they have a cartridge oil filter, and it's obviously upside down in these engines. And the great thing about it is in the cap, they do have a drain plug, so that's what we're going to use today. Now, it's easy to utilize this drain plug because they have an O-ring seal rather than a crush washer, so we can whip it out, we can drain the contents of the oil filter housing, and then we can put it back in without having to worry about changing any crush washers, anything like that. Now the oil filter housing holds about approximately 0.4 of a litre, 400 mils. So what we're going to do is drain the whole thing, put the plug back in, start the engine up again, let it run, and then we're going to try and get that oil level reading again, check it out, and hopefully it should come just about right. So the first thing we're going to do is start the engine up, get the oil nice and warm, let it run for a while, and then it'll drain off nice and easy. And also we need to get it above that 70 degrees C to be able to get a nice reading after we've drained the oil filter housing. Alright, so let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the front end of the car up in the air just on some wooden blocks now. So first thing we need to do is remove this access panel on the right hand side of the car, just under the front bumper, and then that'll give us access to the oil filter housing itself. So that's just removed with 4 screws, one there, and 2 on the inside of the wheel well there. So we'll get that shifted out of the way now. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the access panel now removed, and we can now see our oil filter housing up here. There's the black cap for it there. So we're going to be removing the drain plug in the centre of the black cap there. That takes a 6mm Allen, and then we're just going to let the contents of the oil filter housing drain out. I've got an old ice cream container here, and then once that's drained out, we'll put the plug back in. So we'll take a look at that now. Okay, so that's just about it. We should have approximately 0.4 of a litre in the drain pan there. So we'll reinstall our plug now. Give it a bit of a clean there. There we go. Okay, so now we've got our drain plug reinstalled. What we'll do is we'll drop the car back down on its wheels, and then we'll just run that engine oil up to temperature again, and then we'll take another quick reading and see where we're at. Okay, so now the access panel's back in place. We're ready to drop the car back down on its wheels, and then we'll warm that engine up. Okay, so the car's back down on its front wheels now. We're sitting on a nice level surface, and you can see my oil temperature is above the minimum required 70 degrees C to take that oil reading. So we've got the correct oil temperature. We're sitting on a nice level surface. So what we'll do now is press the BC button on the indicator stalk, and we'll hold it in for 3 seconds. Now you can see it's thinking about it there, and then once we get that oil reading, we can see whether we've got the correct level or not. So you can see we've got the clock symbol there now. Alright guys, so as you can see, we've got a reading of 0.8 there now, 0.8 of a litre. So we've done that first drain, we've now ended up with this. So what I'll do now is I'll just top it up ever so slightly, looking to aim towards 0.2 of a litre, and then we'll take another reading, and we're just aiming for that 1 litre on the reading there. So let's see how we go. Alright, so as you can see there now guys, we're at 1.1 litres, so that's near enough for me. I'm not going to mess around with that anymore, and that 0.1 will just burn off eventually, so yep, that's close enough for me. I'm happy with that. Alright guys, there we have it. That just shows you how that electronic dipstick can mislead you a tiny bit, especially with them quick readings. They are quite a coarse, rough reading, and now you'll know what to do to correct your oil level if it's sitting a little bit high there. Hope this video helped you guys out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm MTech Guy. Thanks a lot for watching.